And when I started this role, I said I was bestowed superpowers with this cloak. But when I think of you, when I think of what you have done, you don't need a cloak to have superpowers. You just need to be you. And I've watched your career. I've studied your journey over many, many years and wanted to be, in many ways, a disciple of you. As you were a disciple to Dr. Martin Luther King, I followed you and learnt from you. And so in this short space of time, I am fortunate enough to go to our fellowship here at Homerton, where we're seeking to do great things to many people, that we put to the fellowship that we would like to honor you. We would like you to join us as an honorary fellow of this college at Cambridge University. And they said yes. My first recommendation, the civil rights icon, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Doesn't get better than that. Sir, this is a proud moment for me in my professional life to be standing here as head of this college at Cambridge University to induct a very great man to our fellowship. I know there's one or two people that want to say a few words, so I want to allow them to do so. I want to begin by asking my friend for many, many years, who's fought many, many battles, to come up and say a few words. Please give a round of applause to Keith Vaz.
Principal Woolley, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, Fellows of Homerton College, Cambridge, I feel a little embarrassed because I would have hoped that it would be my old college, Gonville Keys, that would be bestowing today an honorary fellowship on the Reverend Jesse Jackson. But it is the college of my daughter Anjali, who came to study here for 3 years and graduated a couple of years ago, that is doing this. This is probably the highlight, certainly the highlight, of the visit of the Reverend Jackson to London and Cambridge and Leicester this last week. And we're here because of the decision that you have all taken to bestow this upon him. Can I just say this about your principal? He is one of the people that I most admire in politics, and of course, politicians are not people that you should admire. I'll just tell you that. But Simon Woolley is not a politician, but he is in politics because everything that he has done has been very political. And when I heard that he'd been elected by all of you to the principal's position here at Homerton, I was absolutely thrilled. I can think of no better leader for Homerton over the next few years than Simon Woolley. I think he will be a remarkable principal, and you have made an amazing decision. I first met the Reverend Jackson in 1987 when I went over to the Congressional Black Caucus with some of my parliamentary colleagues elected in 1987 to attend that very special event. Simon has been many, many times. Basically, the whole of Washington, D.C. turns black because every black political leader turns up in Washington, D.C., and he was then the star speaker because he had become, at that stage, the first black man to contest a presidential election in '84. He had won so many primaries and he had done so much in politics. I don't think I would have been elected to the House of Commons had it not been for the inspiration of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I don't think that Barack Obama would have been elected President of the United States had it not been for the work that had been done by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He is, as the principal has said, the direct link from Martin Luther King to Barack Obama, and you cannot go from one to the other without passing through the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Maybe he can be described in biblical terms as the John the Baptist of the Obama era. But so many presidents have taken wise counsel from him. So many countries and governments have listened to what he has said. When we first invited him to London to an event, we brought him face to face with a man called Stuart, who was held as a hostage in Iraq. And Stuart was only able to come back to the United Kingdom because of the intervention of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. So he is more powerful than an elected politician because he doesn't have to bother about whips. He doesn't have to bother about leaders. He doesn't have to bother about manifestos. He does what he instinctively should do, which is to be there as the greatest living champion of equality, I believe, all over the world. Both my children, Luke and Anjali, both graduates of the greatest, let's face it, the greatest university in the world, the University of Cambridge, wished that they could have been here with him today. They were with him last night when he met the Secretary of State for Education, Nadeem Zahawi, and he had a long half-hour discussion about education with the Secretary of State, and he said he was coming to Homerton. I'm sure he'll be a visitor, knowing what Simon is capable of doing. You'll have many, many visitors coming over here over the next... you do know the Pope's coming next week, don't you? He talked about Homerton and talked about the honour that you are going to bestow on him today. I am just so thrilled to be here, to be part of this. I'm looking forward to hearing what Robin is going to say, because Robin has made a feature of his work as the head of politics here, a study of black rights. He's written some amazing books. He's going to talk about the influence of the Reverend Jackson on the black sections movement, which is so vital because we wouldn't have had a black sections movement but for what he did there in America. I did say to Robin when I spoke to him that I was thinking of doing a postgraduate degree, and since I've got my undergraduate degree from my son's college, I should really do my postgraduate degree at Homerton. And so I think it was a long pause. Not another friend of Simon Woolley. Anyway, so thank you for inviting me. Principal, thank you for doing this. Fellows, what an amazing decision that you've made. And I hope very much that the Reverend Jackson will come back again to Homerton. Thank you.
We've got a few more short speeches, but before that, I would like us just to get a flavour of just how great this man has been to me and to many people around the world over many decades. Lights down, cue video.
Be on welfare, but I am somebody. I may be in jail, but I am somebody. I may be uneducated, not a perfect party. We're not a perfect people. Yet we are called to a perfect mission. Our mission: to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to house the homeless, to teach the illiterate, to provide jobs for the jobless, and to choose the human race over the nuclear race. We pause and give praise and honor to God for being good enough to allow us to be at this place at this time. When I look out at this convention, I see the face of America, red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight, the real Rainbow Coalition.
It's hard to imagine how we could have come as far as we have without the creative power, the keen intellect, the loving heart, and the relentless passion of Jesse Louis Jackson. And God isn't done with him yet.
Come to Operation Black Vote. We will help you, guide you, encourage you to be the very best you can be. That's what this poster campaign is about today. Ask the best from yourself and from society. First step, register to vote.
Every vote matters, everybody matters, and issues of substance, whether it's health and safety, education, fairness in the job market, access to capital, all determined by politics. And so engage in it. If you expect good outcomes, make big investment in voting.
Monsieur Jesse Jackson, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons commandeur de la Légion d'honneur.
But the slum was not born in me, and it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high, stick your chest out, you can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. Suffering breeds character, character breeds faith. In the end, faith will not support. You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but just know that you're qualified, and you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive.
I love that last bit, sir. Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. Keep hope alive. You moved people to tears. You inspired a generation like me to believe that we could change our world. You did that. I want to ask Dr. Fernando Gallo to come and say a few words now. Round of applause, please, Dr. Fernando.
So giving a speech after that, it's not going to be my friend. So I told Simon he's going to bring in the rhythm of politics in the slow academic life, so we're trying to catch up. So thank you very much to Simon and Matthew for inviting me today to speak on behalf of Homerton College, but especially to Reverend Jesse Jackson for being here with us, and to you all. I have to admit, I'm not only excited and of this great honor, but quite moved by this opportunity. When 10 years ago I was teaching your speeches in the middle of the Swiss Alps at the University of Lugano to my students of political communication, I would have never imagined to have a day like that. In those classes, I discussed with my students the movement of black emancipation in America and the key role of the black church and the black pastors in conceiving sermons that were political speeches and political speeches that were sermons, as they both are different approaches to achieve the same thing, so conveying the good news, conveying hope, as Jesse Jackson said. From Dr. King to Barack Obama, who learned it at the church of Pastor Jeremiah Wright, and with Jesse Jackson, they represent the black church tradition for which sermons are not dry words on a page. They are rather living words. Faith here is a call to activism. We've seen it. To the making of God's word, living in each person, in each experience, in each community. And in this case, the church is mostly about community and justice, as well as the language of politics is also religious language, able to inspire hope and action. A life lived as a mission is a representation of Jesus' lived testament, that spark of infinite, of divine, is shining in each finite human being, whose dignity is untouchable by any power, no matter who they are, no matter how you look. For over 50 years, Reverend Jesse Jackson has worked for civil rights, peace, and the promise of justice. From his years in the civil rights movement, his work as the founder of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and as an international ambassador for human rights, he has left an undeniable and indelible impression on the history of our time. As described in a very recent book by David Mashorta, I'm Somebody, Why Jesse Jackson Matters, he burst onto the national scene during the events that led to the famous protest in 1965 at Selma, Alabama, and he soon gained his place in the movement with Martin Luther King and with those men and women who helped to change the world, facing often unjust imprisonment and discrimination. A beacon for social change for American society, and not only. Jackson, with the Rainbow Push Coalition, promoted social justice, civil rights, and political activism, and created space and opportunity in a restrictive society, not only for African Americans, but including Native Americans, Asian Americans, Arab Americans, young Americans, disabled veterans and farmers. A place for the unbelonging, as our principal, Simon Woolley, often likes to say. So Reverend Jesse Jackson traveled not just across America, but also across the world, as has been said, preaching a message of hope in the midst of racial injustice. By reading his sermons that have been published and that you can read in Jesse Jackson's works, Keeping Hope Alive, we notice that Jackson's words are immersed in the scripture. In the speech delivered at the Democratic Party convention in 1984, Rainbow Nation, he calls the United States to become a place of belonging, of inclusivity, and to choose, as he says, the human race over the nuclear race. In the sermon Justice for All, he quotes Martin Luther King metaphor. The arch of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This moral arch he refers to is the same arch of history mentioned by Barack Obama in his 2008 victory speech. This is a powerful religious metaphor that moves throughout the black church tradition and it tells the story of a journey towards a final destination, the promised land of justice. But we know that history is not a moral force in and of itself, and it has no set course. Looking from the perspective of the present, we can say that it was this rhetoric that was making history by moving people to action, thanks to the power of the prophecy of political emancipation. These and the testament of lives lived to promote justice were fostering the change of the historical course. As historians and academics, we are used to analyze the past, but political leaders are making history by presenting a vision of the future and for the future. It is easy to forget, especially nowadays, I think, the regenerative power of great politics. And we need to remember that in the United States, the contribution of political language of the Black church has played a fundamental role in this kind of politics. Reverend Jesse Jackson has lived in prophetic times. Born poor and black in the south of the United States, 75 years after slavery ended, lived mostly through a black and white world, a world that called for his stirring oratory, his vital leadership, and the gift of prophecy. Prophetic times are those times that need people who faithfully believe that their duty is to criticize the moral and political corruption of their times and exhort their fellow citizens to fight and sacrifice themselves, if needed, for political emancipation and the redemption of their country. To fight the oppressors and the injustice, political liberty and religious regeneration are inseparable elements of a redemptive vision designed to inaugurate, under God's guidance and protection, a radically new epoch in history, to edify that city on the hill and announce the coming of new times, the prophecy of hope. Jesse Jackson closed the distance between the sacred and the secular and showed the vision of the promised land with the creative power of prophecy and the passion for justice. And I do believe that we still need and we still live in prophetic times, and we still need prophets able to inspire the change. And for this, I'm very grateful to Jesse Jackson and to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You see, can we have that picture? Fernanda, come and have that picture there. Sit down. Take that picture. Stay down. Stay sitting. Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. There you go. I can see Fernanda glowing now. That's the picture on the wall. That's the picture. That's the picture she will take in the classroom of politics to say, this is my hero. It was the same when I showed my son. When I showed my son the picture of Reverend Jesse Jackson when he was young, when Reverend Jackson was much younger, my son turned around to me, said to me, "Dad, I didn't know you knew Will Smith." And then he met the great man. He met the great man. My son must have been about eight or nine. And he shook his hand. The Reverend put him on his shoulder. He went back to school the next day, my son, junior school. And he had a picture of Reverend Jesse Jackson in it. They have in school called Show and Tell. This 8-year-old kid stood up in classroom. He said, "I met Reverend Jesse Jackson, 2-time presidential candidate, 1984, 1988. And the teacher was like, oh my gosh. Inspired my son to believe. I now want to ask Robin Bunce, another good man, great man, to say a few words. Please, Robin.
Thank you very much. Principal, Reverend Jackson, my friends. The last 2 years have been very hard. We've mourned, and we've mourned with those who've mourned. Today we celebrate. Today we celebrate a life that is well lived, a life dedicated to justice and peace. Reverend Jackson's achievements in America are well known. For this reason, I want to shift the focus to the United Kingdom and discuss his impact on politics in the UK. I want to focus particularly on his influence on debates regarding black representation in Parliament, which Keith Vaz alluded to earlier. These debates came to a head in Britain at the very time that Reverend Jackson was seeking the Democratic presidential nomination in the US. I am, of course, referring to the debates surrounding the election of Diane Abbott, Paul Boateng, Bernie Grant and Keith Vaz, a breakthrough in British politics which changed the face of Parliament for good. First, some context. Reverend Jackson came to prominence in the US fighting the twin evils of segregation and disenfranchisement. As one of the Greenville Eight during the sit-ins movement which swept through America's southern states in the 1960s, he was part of a new movement which used direct action to challenge Jim Crow. The Selma campaign of 1965 was his first major campaign alongside Dr. Martin Luther King and as part of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Today, Selma is rightly remembered and rightly celebrated as the campaign which led to the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which for the first time in American history enfranchised black citizens on equal terms to their white counterparts. The Voting Rights Act transformed American politics. The mass enfranchisement of black people in the South broke up the old solid South, creating a political realignment which paved the way for Reverend Jackson's campaigns in 1984 and 1988 to win the Democratic presidential nomination. In the mid-1980s, at the very time when Reverend Jackson was considering his first bid for the Democratic nomination, a campaign for black representation was underway in Britain. Building on previous initiatives, Black Sections launched. The goal of Black Sections to gain political representation at all levels of the Labour Party, in local government and in Parliament. Black Sections faced opposition from all sides. Some black radicals of an older generation were suspicious of engaging with established political parties. Equally, there were some anti-racists in the Labour Party leadership, some white anti-racists, who believed erroneously that Black Sections was simply a new form of racial segregation. Reverend Jackson's example was important in addressing all of these objections. In 1985, the British magazine Race Today, and we saw the cover on the screen a moment ago, ran a feature on Reverend Jackson. The journal argued that his 1984 campaign had put the question of black power on the American agenda in a way that it had not been since the height of the civil rights movement. It argued that his campaign demonstrated the growing electoral power of black voters. Edited by Darcus Howe and Leela Hassan, Race Today was Britain's leading black radical leading black radical journal, an important voice in Britain's black and Asian communities. Darcus Howe went on to interview Reverend Jackson for British television. Here, Reverend Jackson spoke about his campaign against apartheid in South Africa, emphasizing the way in which his candidacy in the American election had shifted the American debate on apartheid. In that sense, the interview underscored the importance of black candidates in national elections. While the Reverend Jackson's example persuaded many black radicals to throw their weight behind Black Sections, the Labour leadership, the white Labour leadership, was a much harder task. Even after their election, the new Black Sections MPs were treated with suspicion by the Labour leadership, derision by the British media, and subjected to harassment by parliamentary authorities. However, soon after their election, Abbott, Grant and Vaz were invited to the US, where they were made honorary members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and they spent time with Reverend Jackson. Needless to say, it became far harder to dismiss the new MPs once they had Reverend Jackson's endorsement. Reverend Jackson also visited London in 1990, further heightening the authority of the new MPs. Reverend Jackson's visit to Parliament was organised at the invitation of Diane Abbott, Bernie Grant and Keith Vaz. Speaking to the British press, Reverend Jackson endorsed the new MPs wholeheartedly. He also made the case for greater minority ethnic representation in Parliament. None of the opponents of black representation in the Labour Party, many of whom wanted photo opportunities with Reverend Jackson, dared to speak out against him and dared to contradict his arguments. In this sense, Reverend Jackson played a part in entrenching the notion that our Parliament must be as diverse as the nation it represents. Or put another way, he helped build the consensus in favour of what Keith Vaz has described as the rainbow over Westminster. Reverend Jackson's career stretches from the era of civil rights to the era of Black Lives Matter. As an opponent of segregation in the US, an opponent of war in Vietnam, an opponent of apartheid in South Africa, he has been a tireless champion of social and racial justice. As leader of the Rainbow Coalition, he has been a champion of the dispossessed and the marginalized. Principal. On behalf of the Fellowship of Homerton College, I present the Reverend Jesse Jackson to be an Honorary Fellow of Homerton College.
I, Simon Woolley, Baron Woolley of Woodford, as principal, admit you as honorary fellow at our college. How wonderful is that? The civil rights icon is now a fellow of our college. You know, we have had an extraordinary few weeks here at Homerton. We had a visitor, sir, a couple of weeks ago. His Royal Highness the future King, Prince Charles. So he was the first to sign my new visitor book. I want you to be the second. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now we will proceed to have a light lunch in the dining room, in the Fellows' Room. Thank you all very much.